So two of the most unhealthy images that I see for PhD students is the starving student narrative as well as the student hero narrative. I want to talk about that today and propose a alternative narrative that I think is a little bit more healthier, and it gets people to not get into those moments where they are in bad situations. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor for to help you out. So I created this sharing economy editing platform. Go check it out. It's Reciprocity. The E is written with a 3. That's Reciprocity, and all of this YouTube and social media stuff. All right. So what am I talking about here? We have these images. If I was to talk about PhD students, there's two images that often come up. The first image is the starving student image, where you don't have any money, you're not doing anything, you are kind of like a beatnik, I guess, kind of wandering around and just doing stuff where you're just philosophizing and having coffee and all of these kind of things. That's the one image that we often sort of imagine in our heads. And then the other image is the student hero that goes around and they work from 4 a.m. and they go until midnight, and many nights they'll stay up all night long doing all of the work that needs to be done because there is some evil professor that is not helping them out, and they have to work in a lab all night long to get these science, these experiments done to actually get something published. And if they don't get that published, then everything melts. And if they actually do that, then they become the hero, and everybody says how brilliant that they actually are. These both images that we have in our heads are actually creating situations where we get into binds and we don't view ourselves as actual employees. I want you to change the narrative and think of yourself instead as just an employee of a corporation or a company. And yes, you're a little bit underpaid in terms of what you should get, but you're also getting a great deal of training and bonus from that training that you can go and take with that. Go do some really wonderful things with that. So instead of having those sort of heroic or really negative images of what it means to be a PhD student, I want you just to view yourself as an employee. And so if you just view yourself as an employee and you're actually just investing in your human capital by doing that PhD, you're going to change the narrative a little bit. That means you're going to be looking out for yourself, and you're going to be making sure that you are taking care of yourself, and you're going to realize that, hey, I can just work a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4 or an 8 to 6 or whatever. I can work normal employee hours that are normal, and I can go and have a life on the other side of it. And if they can't allow me to do that, to have a normal life, then I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. This is not the right situation for me. You need to get into the mode where you can view yourself as having a normal life, where you're pushing back and you're like, I'm just an employee. I'm doing my thing that I need to do. And if you don't have that adequate possibility to just be an employee and do your thing and have some time off and have dinner with family and all of that kind of stuff that normal, regular, everyday people do, instead of eating pizza from your box in a lab, then you're not going to get yourself into a bind. And I've seen this many times before, this sort of both narratives, and it's usually the heroic narrative. That heroic narrative almost always ends up with somebody being burnt out. It almost always ends up with somebody just exiting for whatever reason because they can't take it, they don't like it. All of that sort of heroic, because it's attractive, right? Especially if you're in the field. You're going into the field, you're doing your PhD because you view yourself as a hero in the end. You're going to succeed and do these wonderful things. But almost always it ends up as somebody getting burnt out or being discouraged or whatever. And I've been there too, right? I view myself in that sort of image too. But I have to pull back and I have to say, hey, I'm just doing a job here. And that's the only thing that matters, is I'm just doing a job. And guess what? If it ends perfectly fine and I don't do anything in a given day, well, that's what a normal employee actually does. And yes, if I was to do that repeatedly, I would get fired, right? But and that's what a normal employee does. As long as you're going in and you're doing your work and you're doing your stuff and you're putting in the effort, you should be able to sort of manage everything else, that you actually have a life, you can do things on your own, and you're not sacrificing absolutely everything for the corporation that you ultimately are an employee of. I know lots of people sort of don't view it that way, and I know many of the sort of systems that we have, like the banking system and those kind of things, penalize PhD students because they're not viewed as employees. But we have to stop and think about that and say, hey, we're employees. We need to negotiate for good labor conditions, right? If collectively all PhD students started viewing themselves as employees, and they're not, because you're all going to think that you're heroes and all of that kind of stuff. You're going to have these stupid images in your heads, and people are going to sort of, beat it into your head that you need to be heroic, right? Like, that is the culture when you get into academia. But if you remove that, and if you collectively got together, you'd negotiate for better labor conditions. You would do things where you'd get better salary. There would be nobody would possibly go into the career if you viewed yourself as an employee to do things for free, right, as what you actually do. But instead, you view yourself as this heroic student going to do some amazing things. Or you view yourself as a starving student, and that's usually what happens in the later PhD stages. You become that starving student image of yourself. So I just want you to take a step back and say, hey, we're just employees. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. We're doing our job. It's a little weird in how it's structured and what we actually do, but we're employees, and we're getting paid for creating new ideas. And whatever those ideas look like, that's fine. But you have to take a step back and say, I'm perfectly good doing that. And when you do that, you start creating boundaries in your life, and you start doing some really important things that are happy or that are healthy for you personally. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.